Okay, thank you very much. Let us start our session. We have 1 hour to discuss. We can't hear you. Channel 5. Okay, channel 5. So everyone, you have to have headset. So otherwise you will not hear. 5. I can hear myself at least on channel 5. Yeah, thank you very much. I hope our online participants also can hear us. I hope our session will be interactive enough. So if you would like to say something or invite to say, please get to the mic and tell to the mic to let people to hear you online also. Unfortunately, we have only 1 hour. And our topics are really difficult and still may be very important for everyone. In the modern world, internet was developed using the multi-stakeholder approach. But digital transformations and sovereignizations in some countries usually not using such approach. We want to discuss during this session how it could be changed, what could be negative impacts by digitalization of services and governmental approaches. And I hope as a result, we will start finding a way of how to inhibit such impact or have the better development for our digitally transformed life as good as the internet was at all. So we have designated speakers who may answer the questions, but also if you want to share experience from your country, from your location, from your activity, you are also welcome to ask questions. I will also pass this. So let me ask my colleague Andrei Sherbovich from Moscow Free University to have a short introductory speech on this problem. Andrew, can you hear us? Can you join us?
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrei Sherbovich. I'm from greetings from Moscow. I'd like to
just a moment, Andrew. Can you hear? Since we have issue, we can hear you on headset. Just a moment. Is it works well? Does the sound goes down? Andrew, please test. Say something. Hear me. Andrew?
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Because sometimes the organizers switching my mic off. I'm trying to speak. One more. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Just a moment.
Okay, okay, good. Let me start. Let me start.
Can you say something?
1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? One more time.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, you hear it here, but not in headset. It was working actually.
One, two, three.
No, it doesn't go to the headset. Zoom sound does not go into headset. Okay. Connect to Zoom from phone, get a headset, and try to hear yourself. Okay. I will run sessions, but just get into this. Okay, sorry. I hope remote participants
Zoom
will be able
participants stating that
to
they
join
can
and say something for us a bit later. So it's not the first time that at IGF we have issues.
I cannot hear you. One, two, three.
Citizens. In some cases, in some countries, in some locations, also technologies and especially very advanced technologies started to be used to surveil people or to control activities or to block some kinds of information. And we really not aware globally on how it happens. Internet is a global stuff, is a global thing. It was developed by different stakeholders for the purposes of all good. But the digitalization and digital transformations usually happens locally. And if you are receiving some services or you are transforming your life with digital services, you usually do it in your location, in your country, and maybe not always aware of how it happens in other locations. The same way, if somebody, corporations, governments, or criminals abuses digital services to against you, That's usually might be happening from other place, but usually happens locally. Some criminal activities targeting citizens of one country or in one location may not be repeated instantly at other places. So we might not be aware of such bad activities or activities of bad actors, which already happened in other parts of the world. We may not be aware of what happens to us. And vice versa, we may be experiencing protecting ourselves from not very good actors, and other people are still not ready to do this. I really would like to ask maybe some of you how your life have been changed digitally. First of all, what digital transformation with using technologies have happened to you for a few last times, and maybe for sure it happens for good. And later, I would like to ask you, maybe something bad happens with you with digital transformation. Okay, let me start from experience from my country, Russian Federation. A lot of services have been channel 5. Yeah. So first of all, a lot of digital services have been, a lot of state services have been digitally transformed in Russia. You can send requests to the government, receive digital replies. You can ask for providing some kind of government services. For example, releasing new ID, driver's license could be requested digitally. That's really good. But on the other hand, the state gained power to track people activities and for example, try to let's say, or wish to monetize these activities, providing it back to corporations. Maybe also you heard that in Russian Federation there was a set of sovereign internet legislations when government tried to gain more power on this on usage of internet resources like IP addresses and domain names. That was done by the really good purposes like protecting citizens or like protect the country and country businesses from interference from outside. But on the other hand, this legislation added a lot of administrative pressure and paperwork for operators. For example, in cooperation, in some of the countries, you can obtain IP addresses from local internet registries through local internet registries from regional internet registry and start working. But in Russia, because of sovereign internet law, you also have to report your resources obtained to the government authority, to the regulator, also report your interconnections and so on. So at least it's not just maybe later using for surveillance of identifications of citizens, but also it's additional administrative pressure compared to operators in other countries. That's an example from at least one country. I would like to check maybe sound have been fixed and remote participants could speak and be heard.
1, 2, 3. Check.
No, still not. Unfortunately. I would like an audience to jump in and tell us about how your life have been digitally transformed, and maybe there are some other drawbacks of this. Please come here, speak to the mic.
So,
Just sit down.
yeah, thank you very much. I would like to share that in most cases, sometimes when we look at individual entities, we might be proud that we are doing very well. My name is Asha Binala. I'm from Tanzania, and I would like to share our own perspective of governance from my own country. In my country, because when you talk about digital transformation, you want to make sure that all the key sectors are also adapting. Like we're talking about the government itself, the private sector, yes, the public, the government, and the CSOs. Now, the challenge for my country, when we talk about digital transformation, we are talking about transformation that has been done very well. Tanzania has done very well in digital transformation for the country when it comes to services, whether it's migration, maybe whether it's police filing, and all kind of filing. It's really, really impressive, to be very honest. Now, the challenge comes with, while the government is doing a lot of work and a lot of transformation, and especially in infrastructure, in systems, in applications, in solutions, we have a society which does not yet understand fully how to use the transformed solutions. And we understand why the government might do a lot of awareness to its people. The sectors which does very well in literacy, as in digital literacy, is the CSOs, and it is also the private sector. But then you have the private sector and CSO, which is not really embracing digital transformation. So there is a lot of silos. You have a government which is doing very well, and the key players who are not that maybe interested, but not.
I have a question to you.
Yeah.
Can I ask for another one? Yeah. Then I have a question to you. You said that government did really well in digital transformation, but did any discussions appeared before this digital transformation? Did government consulted private sector, as if you said, consulted other stakeholders which are joining internet governance? So do the stakeholders or public aware of this digital transformation? Did they really ask for it? Or maybe your government, yeah, transform something else which does not, which was simpler to transform, but does not require transformation actually. So how did this transformation went in your country? And also it's a question for you others. I think that representatives of government are here. So it would be really interesting to hear how you have consulted other stakeholders in making decisions of transforming digitally something.
So maybe to respond to your question, it's on. Maybe to respond to your question, I'm not a government representative, but I'm a very active. I'm a very active actor in the society, so I sort of know what is going on in the ecosystem. You know, there are forces that makes the government to transform and go digitally, and one of those forces is the resources. So when we had the World Bank on board, and we had the European Union on board in terms of funds, now the government created a roadmap for it to be digitally transformed.
So for you stakeholders, actually not your citizens, not your civil society, not your private sector, but actually World Bank and European Union.
Exactly. So they started last year. We have newly launched a digital transformation blueprint in Tanzania. I would say in the last 2 years, there is engagement of stakeholders compared to when we are starting integrating, which was in the early 2020s and 2021.
But during creation of blueprint, stakeholders was not involved.
No, not to an effective amount, and not. And I think the other reason was because there is a gap. We need to understand that not all countries has an active actors when it comes to CSOs. So there was sort of a gap when it comes now as CSOs to contribute, or maybe the government identifying proper platforms to engage for feedback. So that it's sort of a bit complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I also would like to invite somebody else to join experience here, please. But don't forget to introduce yourself and tell about location where you're working.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
My name is Kashfi Inua. I work with the Nigerian government. So I think for me, the world we are today, digital is a lifestyle. If you look at what we do, everything, we rely on technology to do a lot of things. For example, for me, I use my mobile phone to set alert to wake me up in the morning. I use it to read news. I use it to connect with family and friends. I use knows everything about me. And when you talk about sovereignty, is very key, because most of the developing countries, they don't have data sovereignty, they don't have operation sovereignty, and they lack digital sovereignty. The data mostly is being captured, processed by hyperscalers, who are not, in most cases, they don't even have presence in those developing countries. In terms of operation, they decide how to operate without consulting the country.
Yeah,
They don't
really, thank you. I'll ask you another question. I really understand you because for population measures or for economic structure, Russian Federation is really close to Nigeria. So we understand each other. If Russia pretends not to be developing country, but it's and then we are talking that the people or the structures who can gather data, they becomes kind of digital autarchies. Not in the meaning of like previous centuries, also. Yes, that's why we started the session. So maybe as your governmental representative in your country, you have already solutions or eager to do something or ask for advice, please.
We have many solutions government is deploying to reach the citizens, because the citizens are online. The government also need to be online to serve the citizens. So we have a different solutions from, like, if you want to register for passport, driver's license, do transaction online. Like, our financial sector is the most digitized sector in Nigeria. This was as a result of government policy of cashless society. That what triggered that digital transformation in the financial sector. And that also is permeating across, because today you can easily make payment using mobile money or internet banking. That's also inspire other sectors to start digitizing.
Yeah, but okay, if you want to jump in with your example, please raise your hand. I hope, well, I see definitely still Australian government here. I'm not sure that somebody from this session. Okay, you are next. But now I have a question which leading for the third part of our session. So cashless society, any transaction is online, anything is tracked, might be good for, well, fighting criminals, or finding illegal transactions. But also every citizen becomes a good. Information about their activities might be collected. It might be used by the evil corporations or the good corporations or criminals and so on. How your government deals with such negative impacts of a complete digitalization, for example, of financial sector or some other activities? And then we'll hand back to you.
So that is a big challenge for us. And that's why Nigeria also is ranked very high in terms of cyber criminality because of this huge digitization. So the government is doing a lot in terms of having visibility of what is happening online in terms of transaction. We are building our national cybersecurity architecture, and we are also working with the financial intelligence unit to create that visibility for every transaction. Now we do it manually, but we are building intelligence in it, adding AI to predict all suspicious transactions that can curtail the number of the financial fraud.
And how these activities of discovering, keeping financial data, and analyzing it is being controlled by civil society or human rights organization in your country, or nothing like this is happening?
So for the financial unit, it's a big ecosystem where everybody is part of it. Any financial transaction, and we have the civil society organization as part of it. Now NIDA is leading in terms of building the software that will bring that intelligence. And our approach in everything we do, co-designing and co-creation, is at the heart of everything we do. We have a participatory framework where we do many policy dialogue as part of our rulemaking process before we came up with any regulation. So we engage the civil society organization, we engage the academia, the private sector, and everybody to be part
It's
of it.
really, really good. Thank you very much. So that's, you are really protecting from going on digital autarchy. Please, another example.
Thank you. I'm Moses Hawaii from South Africa, from the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies.
So your governmental representative.
Yes. I think mine, it's more on data sovereignty. I'm picking up sort of like a trend that is happening currently. There's multinational companies that are actually coming into the country, you know, and acquiring companies that were already operating in South Africa, either, you know, preserving data and so on. And obviously, in that regard, they do obviously adhere to, you know, the policies within the country, right? But also, the very same companies have to adhere to the policies within their respective countries where they're coming from. And in that regard, you find that, you know, there's data obviously that has to, if needed, need to be shared with the countries that they actually coming from. Now, the challenge that I'm picking up here is that, I mean, you are in you know, let's say South Africa, for instance, and then you have to somewhat, you know, transmit data to your respective country. I mean, my thinking is that you can't serve two masters at once, right? And obviously that does actually have an impact to citizens within that specific country, right? Because obviously when the company was acquired, the question is, were, you know, the people who have that information, you know, in that, or rather in that particular server that is, you know, acquired by the new company, were they in any way consulted about the acquisition and what it would mean for their data to be kept by that specific company that has acquired the new company, right?
Yeah, so in dialogue happens, do you invite your stakeholders from your country and, well, that's foreign companies, because not much countries could allow themselves a Google or Facebook or so on. Do those companies tries to do any multi-stakeholder consultation in your country, or well, they're a bit authoritarian in way of dealing with data?
We do have a multi-stakeholder discussions in the country. We do have what we call the ZAIGF, the South African Internet Governance Forum, the other platforms as well to address such discussions. But obviously, as I said, it's a new trend. I'm not sitting here saying that we have all the solutions. And obviously, within South Africa, we have the necessary policies as well, like the Protection of Personal Information Act, which is somewhat similar to the GDPR, right? But obviously, we are dealing with smart people here, right? We're dealing with people who actually look at those very same policies and they pick up the loopholes, right? And as I said, you can't serve two masters at once. Now, the
1, 2,
question here
3.
is, with the very same multinational companies that are actually coming into the country and acquiring the companies and so on, I'm just basically trying to see how do we then ensure that the citizens are protected and they know that what actually happens to their data and so on.
Yes, that's really important because huge corporations are now acquired powers which equivalent to the state powers, but they do not have such responsibilities. Very much for raising a colleague behind you. And again, we heard 3 government representatives so close. If there's somebody from other group of stakeholders who are aware of such issues or would like to share their experience, please raise your hand.
Hello, my name is Paul. I'm from Austria, and I represent an NGO called ICT4D.at, where we use technology for the common good. And I'm also an engineer. I'm a programmer since 15 years or so, so I also understand the technical aspect and also hopefully the aspects of society. I have been an tech enthusiast almost all my life, but recently I feel like I live in a dystopian future where people don't realize that we live on a planet where we used to have a decentralized network called the internet, which was handled as the tool to create a connected and free world, to now where we have these multinationals who were just mentioned by the colleague from South Africa, who are basically centralized the internet and controlling everything we do. In my country, in Austria, we have a fairly okay working democracy, but at the same time, it diminishes every year because there is mass surveillance happening, which enables targeted advertisement, and just a few companies, and mostly from the United States and China, are currently in control of our social media. The person who has interest or most of the money can just buy these ads and manipulate my population and change the elections in their way. Not 100%, but Facebook did research and showed that they can change democratic elections with at least a few percentage points, which is quite impressive. So I fear that most people don't realize this, that democracies currently worldwide can just be bought, or the elections can be bought. And I don't know how to react to that, and I don't have a solution because most people just continue scrolling in their time feed without actually.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for reminding me, because I have to reply with Russian experience to what you said with the 2 points. In this year, there was a 2 days national IGF in Russia. It was not like this IGF. It was not that open. The whole 2 days was spent by different stakeholders uh, in discussion of so-called lake of data legislation, where a government want to propose legislation that every corporation must share collected data on people with the government. Great idea that government collects its data from the government, from state services, but now they oblige corporations who collect data to provide it to the government. In response, during that discussion, government promised that this data will be anonymized and provided back to corporations for better services.
I don't know.
Guess what happened? On the second reading of this law, obligations for the government to provide data back to corporations disappeared. So now huge businesses have to provide it. And if you're talking about elections, we also have a great experience. We have online internet voting nowadays in Russia, which is can be controlled, can be observed in anyhow. The OCSE and Venetian Commission's recommendations was ignored during the development. It's the elections digitally transformed. It's a great idea that you can vote from my phone. But when the possibilities of external observations, with possibilities for civil society to control disappeared completely, that's really terrible thing. I hope to ask a few questions for one of the developers. Kaspersky is here. This company was developed this 2 years ago in completely unmulti-stakeholder way. It just popped up and say, okay, now you vote online. So your colleague, please.
Just one last note. Being an engineer and knowing how easy it is to manipulate a database, elections virtually are for me a nightmare, and I would not recommend any country to do so. And one last sentence to my colleague from South Africa. The reason why there will never be an Austrian AI or a South African AI is because we don't have the data to actually train our models. And this is the reason why they don't give us the data. It's called digital colonialism, and it just continues. Thank you.
Hello, it's Abdullah Ahmed Kaynar from Turkey. I am working as a legal advisor in Information and Communications Technologies Authority. Actually, I was a volunteer last 10 years in human rights organizations. In those times, I every time thought that government are very eager to collect data. But when I started work as a legal advisor in government, I saw that a lot of companies, especially financial institutions, wants the government that collection this data, because they told us they need to block imposters to get information from disadvantaged people. And they told us we need more information about citizens to protect them. So our answers that of this problem, we have to empowering individuals to understand how can they protect of imposters. Because if citizens cannot protect themselves, somebody say, we have to protect you for your enemies. That's why we need to clear a line, draw a clear line about data privacy and the freedoms and the sovereignty, and also the how attack these imposters. So the biggest problem of I believe that the modern society is that imposters has a lot of powerful weapons, like a social engineering. They look their profiles, they look their Instagram feeds, and they clearly attack the people. So how governments and financial institutions stop these attacks? We believe that the digital literacy is just the answer. Because if, okay, just if you ask a question.
So you said that Turkish government said that they need data to protect from imposters. But did it succeed? In somehow, do you know of successful cases, or number of successful cases of protection?
We are still 4 or 5 different digital literacy programs about high schools or some disadvantaged peoples like elders, because you know they don't know internet and they share a lot of personal data, and after sharing these data, they easily get attacked by some people.
Yeah, but okay, data collection. Did
Yeah.
it help to regulators to help these people?
Not regulators, but financial institutions say that if we know who he talked with 5 minutes ago, we can easily stop that kind of fraudulent attacks. But we told them we have very similar to GDPR version in Turkey. We told them it's not possible to share all citizens' data with you. But they told us if we don't collect this data, how can we stop them? So we try to empower individuals because there's another way.
That's what really I mean. Yes, thank you very much. Why I ask you a question? In Russia, well, all this content blocking more than 10 years ago appeared with the reason of protecting children. Protecting children from drug abuse, protecting children from sexual abuse, protecting children from suicide propaganda. But actually, 10 years, more than 10 years passed, and statistics says that no crime, there is no decline in crime drugs registered, no decline in children's suicide registered. Content blocking appears, then more surveillance appears, but nothing changes. That I ask my question. That maybe there is positive example of this. And again, that okay. When we're talking about security, when the government talking about security, they usually expel civil society from the discussions. Okay, it's security. We know better. But I think that's what we should reclaim, at least try to reclaim our possibility to talk on this. But maybe somebody have successful examples. I see representative of Finland civil society is here. Maybe you have some experience.
Well, I actually don't have, so I'm Tapani Tatmanen from Finland. I don't really have all that much to say, but on the whole, in Finland, these things mostly work. The dangers are simply that sometimes people seem to be too trusting that they work. And when something goes wrong, they are not prepared. Also, the government that they kind of tend to believe that things will always work, and the data leaks happen, and they don't, there's too much, not enough preparation for that kind of thing, but not so much, let's say, practical problems. Most of the time, it's only when the things break, everybody panics. Well, I guess that's enough.
Okay.
Hi there. My name is Florian Marcus. I'm from a company based in Estonia. I'm also doing my PhD on e-governance on the side. Seeing after our Finnish friends in the north spoke, I figured I might give some input from Estonia. So digital identity is, of course, compulsory in Estonia from birth until death. I would say there are two effects that we see. Number one, because we have two-factor authentication of not just knowledge factors like email or password or something, you make it easier for people to abuse your identity online, harder, sorry. And number two, also, we have something called the data tracker, where in the government portal, I can see almost every single time which government authority looks at what part of my data, when, and most importantly, why. And if there's something that I don't like about this, I go to the Data Protection Inspectorate, and they will have to take a look at this. What is the reason why this system works relatively well is that we have once-only policy in Estonia, meaning that something like your name or your address or your date of birth can always only be stored by one authority within government. So it's not like 20 authorities are sitting on the same data set. It increases data quality as well, and it strengthens cybersecurity because, I mean, if I'm a hacker, I know that 20 authorities have my core data. 19 of the 20 authorities can do the best job in the world, but one does a mediocre job, and that's where I get all of your data, right? And because of the once-only principle, we sort of protect against that. It is not a perfect solution, but yeah, it's the good thing about it is that the public servants also know that citizens have the data tracker. So they are treating their privileged access to people's information with more care because they know that the citizens can see when they do stuff with their data.
Yeah, that's great example. Could you also no,
Okay, so
don't give away microphone.
Whoa, sorry.
Because I'm really glad that you are here.
Me too.
Because in Russia again we have state services portal that you can do a lot of things, but there is no data tracker. Or data tracker exists only for some ideas and some ones, and also sometimes people realize that their data have been used, exactly data which is stored as a state portal, but they can't find who did it actually. And also there is no way to punish abuse, because in some cases it's became known. For example, microcredit organizations sometimes request your credit history, and only then people realize that the microcredit have been approved and start to roll it back. Or, for example, people realize that the joint primaries of political party still existed. My question to you, Estonia is really good at this.
It's fun.
I know. And the people actually really trust their digital services. Well, when I was in Estonia observing digital elections, a few years ago, I asked, okay, how can you trust your digital ID and so on? It might be abused, the government will stole it, or abuse or politics. Somebody will abuse it. They say, no, they will be punished. Exactly what you said. So that's really strong trust which have been built through the years. But maybe you can remember what happens when this how it happened when this digital service started to being approved. Was there something like multi-stakeholder discussions, expert discussions, how it was going at times, to bring us a good example?
I will do a small detour, but I will answer your question, I promise. Actually, I'll answer your question first. At the start, there was not so much multi-stakeholderism simply because that word didn't really exist at the time. So like late 1990s, early 2000s, when the first services were brought online, it didn't.
Board of multi-stakeholder doesn't even exist.
Yeah. And actually, in some sense of the word, I would say you need to decide very clearly what you make compulsory and where you leave multi-stakeholderism alive. Like as an example, Estonia made the decision, everybody must have a digital identity. We can't create a sort of parallel society where some people are registered and some people are not, because ethically we can't, I'm not government, but I used to be in government. We can't accept a situation where two people are having a heart attack on the street next to each other. One person will have medical data, we can treat him, we know the blood group already, we already know when the last, I don't know, medical operation was, and the other person we can't help because there's no data. So yeah, to have some standard level across the board, but then also to allow freedom once we have those standards approved. So for example, you can have different schools using different e-school systems. You can have different banks using different authentication portals and so on. So there's a lot of, there's a very strong ecosystem built on top of those basic credentials. And I think that's why it has flourished so nicely over the last 20 years.
But it's still, there are controls implemented which doesn't allow the system to be abused. Some autarchy to abuse it for bad.
Yes and no. So I'm not actually Estonian. I've been living in Estonia for the last 10 years. I'm German. And my historical experience says if government decides to go in the wrong direction, it will do whatever the hell it wants to do anyway, especially if an authoritarian regime was democratically elected a couple of years ago. So there can't be a kill switch for all digital things to sort of self-explode the second that democracy is in danger or something. What I will say is you need strong rule of law, exactly what you said as well. If you have a rules-based system, usually it is strong enough to fight authoritarian influences from whatever side they may come. But when we look at some countries in the EU as well today, yeah, it can be eroded over the years.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, since we can hear now our online participants, let's try to just a moment. I'll try to turn on mic.
1, 2, 3.
For the participants who would like to speak.
I'm speaking now.
Unfortunately, we can't hear you because I hear you from the Zoom on my device, but I can't hear you in the headset. So maybe you can write your comment and we will read it. Okay, our colleague from Kyrgyzstan, please. Civil society, as I understand.
Thanks, Alexander. Yes, indeed.
Don't forget to introduce yourself, by the way.
Talan Sultanov from Kyrgyz Republic, co-founder of Internet Society Kyrgyz chapter. And I wanted to follow up on the Estonian example that we are using in Kyrgyzstan, Estonian X-Road interoperability platform. And a lot of government services are developed based on that. And that gives us peace of mind that it's not Kyrgyzstan solutions protecting our data, but it's actually Estonian solutions protecting our data. One case I wanted to bring, though, it's related to harmful content blocking. So in Kyrgyzstan, we blocked TikTok because of the harmful content kind of reasons. But what happened is that now people are starting to install VPNs to be able to continue accessing TikTok. And they are installing freeware. And oftentimes they are falling prey to virus programs which come with this VPN. So actually, as a result, people are not more protected, but they're now more vulnerable to kind of harmful things online.
So, but okay, you said this here now at Internet Governance Forum in Saudi Arabia. How do you deal with this issue in Kyrgyzstan? Do you reach your government saying, okay, you're doing wrong stuff? Or how it's, what's your actions in your country to deal with this a bit authoritarian actions in disabling TikTok?
So luckily in Kyrgyzstan, we have active civil society, and the government does involve the civil society, private sector in discussions about internet governance. However, when it comes to issues related where there is a saying, sentence, national security, suddenly everything is blocked because immediately it becomes secret stuff. So no multi-stakeholder approach to that. And of course, when you say cybersecurity, the cybersecurity becomes part of national security. And the way around it has been that when we discuss cybersecurity, we say digital hygiene, digital resilience. So something that has no word cybersecurity, but talks about same issue, then civil society can be involved.
Okay, this is a really good example. I hope, in this case, Kyrgyzstan will go the better practices rather than worse practices from Russia. Okay, and again, please don't shy, please raise your hands, especially if in your country the dialogue happens and there is a really good example against autarchying the data and the internet.
One more thing that I wanted to add real quick about the data tracker, because I said also in Estonia, we don't see all of the data being accessed, for example, when there is an ongoing investigation, which may or may not be lawful depending on which country you're in. But so, for example, in Estonia, when police looks at my address, I don't see it. Why? Because if I would see in the data tracker that police is looking at me, I might go. So in this case, police officer, like a specific police officer, must apply for access to or hidden access to people's data. That is then being approved or rejected. And if it is approved, then they can look at my data without me seeing it. But the second that the criminal investigation is over, with whatever consequence, it must be released to the person that was under investigation. So even if it turns out that I did commit a crime, I will still be given the access, like the log record, basically, of who accessed what part of my data, when and why, because it must be used in court for both sides. So this is one more of those safeguards that, again, you can't see everything on the data tracker immediately, but at the end of the day, you will. So this is really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good example. I encourage everyone to talk about Estonia, how it happens. And again, rule of law working somehow, because in many countries we know that law may be written really, really good, but how it's being executed, and especially in this many cases, it might be really difficult. Okay, anyone else want to share experience or ask a question or an issue? Maybe somebody wrote a comment.
If not, I can talk about online voting in Estonia because it was invoked earlier that nobody should trust elections online.
Well, we have not announced this on this session. I would
No,
like
I
to
know.
talk with you on this topic, but again, Russia is really difficult case because kind of a multi-stakeholder discussion was simulated to approve digital voting, but that's all a sad story about digitalizing some of the essential essential functionality leading to the fair state. So that's for us it's a really painful story. But I know that, for example, in Germany, any electronic interference into the elections is prohibited by constitutional court. So if you can't count ballots or your votes without digital, it's prohibited. So it's another story. It's completely opposite story. So please share your experience.
Good morning, all. It's not sharing my experience, it's more asking a follow-up question to the gent before me.
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
My name is Christelle Onana. I'm working for the African Union Development Agency. It was just a quick one to him is, do you have the list of the entities that have, for the data tracker, do you have the list, do the citizen have a list of the entities where the data tracker is open to them? I don't know if you understand the question. Certainly the taxes, you know, do you?
Yes, so there's in the state portal, there's a selection bar where you can, like, there's basically a big list of registries where you can then say, oh, I want to see who looked at my data from the population registry or from my criminal record or something like that. So you can do it quite granularly, or you can just check all the boxes and see all of the data access. I will say one thing here. While that access is very good, it is not extremely user-friendly. Like, it's very easily accessible, but if I ask you, where is your medical data stored? It's very easy. You know, it's the electronic health record, something like that. But if I ask you some more obscure data point, you may not know which authority holds that data right now. So, like, this is something where we can still make it easier and say, oh, like, instead of specific registries, you could say any family-related data or any education-related data. So you can still make it more understandable for the end user, and that's where I think our government still has some work to do. And we, as the private sector, may or may not push them that way.
Yeah, private sector also have to be responsible and understand, not to try to hoard data just for a case of possible monetization. So that if you don't have data, it could not be leaked or abused.
And when you talk about multi-stakeholders, one thing that the government is usually pretty bad at is inclusion of user groups. But the good thing is that, so in Estonia, public-private partnership is extremely strong. And in every big tender, there will be a requirement. You must do user group research, testing, feedback, everything. So whenever there's like a new service being developed, just put that into your procurement as a baseline. That makes it easier for us as well, because then we have a better idea of what the users actually want, and we are forced to do it. So
it's a really good practice, but I know in my country, the government could really easy emulate such groups, and well, you can meet some people from here. Okay, we are slowly closing our session. We already had 1 hour. Unfortunately, we were not able to let remote participants speak, and the beginning was a bit jumped. We also have not talked about the whole huge group of technologies, digital technologies like digital surveillance, not just corporate surveillance, but the security forces surveillance. We did not talk much. We talked a bit only on content blocking. Yeah, it's like in some places the new digital sovereigns appears. Sovereigns in the Middle Asian meaning that's okay. We want to control what people see, what people do, what information they could consume, and what they say. It's a really important matter. I think we will be able to discuss it on maybe other sessions. or at other AGFs. Unfortunately, oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Warren from Nigeria. I work for government as well. I have a question. I need, if anybody has a possible solution to it. When we started here, we discussed about data being controlled by multinationals. They acquire those data either knowingly to you or otherwise, but they have specific, maybe hidden use for that data. And where that data is domiciled is not very well known sometimes, and how much they manipulate that we may not know. My question now is, has anybody gotten any experience? And we know how powerful these multinationals are. And we also have discussed here that the data may be used to influence even elections and other critical issues in these countries. Does any of us have any experience why or how these multinationals can be obtained or monitored in such a way that such data is either the way the data is used is arranged and how it can be made useful or stopped from such incursions? Thank you.
It's a really great question. I think we could start answering for a long time, but I will again share maybe my experience, because in Russia there is a legislation which obliging foreign corporation to domicile end user data. It's kind of GDPR or more or lending and so on. It exists, but it does not work. So because there is no possibilities how to enforce it. I think this question should be addressed not for maybe us, but for human rights protecting organizations and civil society organizations from the countries of the location of those multinational corporations. Yeah, but unfortunately, in this meeting, few United States human rights protecting organizations decided not to participate. Who about this? So that's really sad. But I think we should start working with other civil society. That's actually we are running this session to set up contacts, to find the ways. We raise the problem of again the data colonizations, which appears only to us, also to Austria. Yeah, which is not very well known as colonized country. So we also have a comment from online, which was written. So please read it.
Yeah, if I may shortly cover the comments that are coming through the chat from actually our online speakers that had to be presented today. So Ksenia Yermoshina, she works for the Center of Internet and Society in France, and she says actually that these restrictions that we have today, this blockage, it happens in different ways, and she says about judicial and extrajudicial approaches, when the first one is mostly based on the legal procedures and court decisions, and the other one is when police just asks the request to block any content they want, and this content blocked upon the request from the special services. And Kit Goldstein, he also shares his experiences, and he says that we need to take more attention, to pay more attention to the monopolization of user data and the spread of user data. I think it would be nice if we could have them today, but unfortunately we had some issues with the audio. Probably we will meet each other next time, and we will have more space to discuss the issues.
Okay. Very last note, please. I'm being signals that we have to finish soon.
Okay, good afternoon all. My name is Hamid Shamsuddin. I'm from Nigeria. I work with the government. So mine is a comment, not a question. I do feel personally that sovereignty is an issue that all countries have to deal with, right? But the context of sovereignty differs from country to country, right? So there is data sovereignty, you have economic sovereignty, right? You have technological sovereignty, right? Even cultural sovereignty. We've spoken about how social media platforms might have more influence over the culture of a country than the influencers inside the country, right? So I think my final comment to be, every country will have to decide on its own what level of sovereignty they want to achieve and what type of sovereignty, right? Because sovereignty will mean different things to all of us, right? And I think that is my final comment for it. Thank you very much.
Again, this decision should be done on multi-stakeholder way. I hope you support it, because in many cases it can be abused. So we met here. We raised the question. I hope we will make for sure every cup of this session a report, and we'll start cooperating. Our contacts are on the session organizer list. I really hope that we would be able to continue this discussion and resolve these issues, because again, we have not discussed the abuses of this sovereignty, which might happen in Russia. Like there is thousands of political prisoners who became prisoners because of their saying on the internet. What did they say? That digitalization and sovereignization was abused. Here also there are some countries, and like Osama Khalid, Ziad al-Sufani, Salma al-Shaeb, who live in this country but was not able to join it here. And I hope that a multi-stakeholder approach in community with other organizations, even those ones who have not joined us in this, we will help to develop really people-oriented digital services with enough level of sovereignization, but without autarchies. Okay, thank you very much. Have a fruitful IGF week, and hope you all then get back safe, home, and free. Thank you very much. I really would like to talk about electronic voting, because I'm not just Russian opposition. I think I'm strong opposition to electronic voting in Russian citizens. Actually, in Russia. Yeah. Well, we met actually in the offline voting. Well, way better than the